Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, I took a quick little lunch break, and now I'm back to paint another one. So those of you joining us for the first time, we painted that one, that rose right back there, where I've used a rose that I've purchased off of Adobe stock, and I showed you how to paint it there into composition. Now I'm going to draw it up and put it into, I use Photoshop. I like using Photoshop, especially when it's 12 degrees outside and snowing. I purchase photos, use Photoshop, kind of build myself a composition, and then I start applying color theory, light and shadow knowledge and stuff like that to the painting to do it that way. A lot of times, a lot of people like to paint from life. My favorite way is not to paint from photos, is to paint on the monitor and, put together different ideas and stuff like that. There's all kinds of ways to do it, and you just got to find out ideas that work for you. Okay, so we're going to use some of the same. Matter of fact, this is the colors I just used on that. And I took a lunch break and everything, and these are still nice and wet here from painting that last rose about almost 2 hours ago. But I have them out there now. Some of my acrylics here got just a little bit of a skin on them from sitting out here, and we have the, the forced air heat is on in here and stuff, and that's not going to be a problem. I'll show you guys how to do, how to go through and solve that kind of problem here. But you can take a scraper, any kind of scraper like this, when you're working on the glass, and remove some of these colors. That's no problem if you want to do that. I'm not going to even worry about it, because I'm going to mix it all up into grays and do color harmonies and stuff. And I really enjoy painting. The Heritage pigments are really pigmented paint, so I really do, and I can change it really easy. So I really do enjoy painting with a dirty brush. Okay, all right. So let's go in and let's do a little sketching and stuff like that. This is one thing that you see me use this in landscapes and stuff like that. When I put up a model that's like this, and those of you learning how to sketch, I took matter of fact, it's a ruler from the Home Depot, and I cut off about 1 foot of it on one side, and put it together so I have a square, and then I extended it here with just a piece of tape and a wood, so I can look at my lines. We can sketch and stuff, but I don't want to copy as much, but I like to show you guys how to do this. Now, like I said before, and some of the others, you could put a piece of plastic over here and transfer the lines, and that's an easy thing to do. But and I do that, and sometimes in portraits and stuff like that. But here I'm just going to transfer the lines, and I do have a little bit of a problem, with shapes and stuff like that. Just to make sure that they don't lean or anything like that, because I'm painting sitting down, and I'm not getting up, since I'm filming for you, I'm not getting up. And so you can see it really easy if you get up and stuff and get back, but I'm not doing that. So what I like to do is use this little square. And so I'm going to come down here, and I'm just going to put right about through here to the center, just a nice little line for the top of the ellipse here of where that vase is. A line right here, that'll be the throat of it right there. And the widest point of it is going to be right in here. And then down here at the bottom of it is going to be right about here. Now you can also use this to go up and down this way to put what would be the center line, or have a center line of your composition. Now there's a lot of artists that always say, don't put it right exactly into the center. And I tend to agree with that, but I also studied a lot of Dutch compositions, and the Dutch did. They put it right there into the center. So a lot of today's artists say don't, and I don't. Generally, I kick it back off one side just a little bit. And I kick it off to the shadow side. Excuse me, just drop that just a bit. I kick it off to the shadow side just a little bit off center here. I'm going to do that today. And that gives me more room to work some highlights and stuff like that right up through here. So that's basically, let's get that up here a little higher. That's basically going to be kind of like where my center line is there. Now, so what does all of those lines mean? Is I'm going to put right up and through here an ellipse. This is going to be the widest part of my vase, which is going to be, I'm going to say, so you can look at this. If you wanted to get it precise, you can go, okay, I'm that wide, go right about halfway, right here to here and say, okay, it's going to be right about there. And we'll come over an equal amount right up out over here to this side over here. So now you can see, and we can flow right down here from our lips down and out, and then you can make it exactly like you want, but I'm actually gonna widen this vase just a bit, so I'm gonna come out just a little bit more down that line and down that line to put my vase on. Okay, so the widest point, and I'm just going to leave those on there for just right about, for right now, for a little bit. And then I'll come back out here. And I'm just using any color. This is all going to cover up any color that you want. This will be, like I say, when I sketched that last one, we started with the general circle, came off of that for what the larger petals are going to be. I'm going to fill in some other smaller flowers and do that, all throughout the whole thing here. But I generally, when I put the roses on, I find the circle and then find the very circle, and then I, like this white one here, has some outside petals. And I'm not going to copy it per se, exact, because I want apply lighting and some of the art and all that kind of stuff to it. So I'll change it up a little bit, but that gives me a good general idea. So those of you that haven't watched the other rose video yet, the palette that I have out here is the Hansa Yellow, Darya Light Yellow, Yellow Oxide, the Naphtha Red Light, Burnt Sienna, Pine Green, Phthalo Blue, which I didn't use any of that in the last painting, Red Violet, Quinacridone Violet, and White. This is the Derivan Open Medium, which is going to allow me to do the Alla Prima. I'm going to use Open Medium and Extender as well together as I do some of this painting. I'm just going to continue on just a bit of this sketching here, just for some ideas. Now, this one petal actually goes all the way over to the other side, and I'm just going to small it down a little bit. We'll put this other bigger petal that comes, so here's the circle of the rose, so here's the bigger petal that comes off of that. And we're going to change this rose. I'm going to change the technique for painting this rose for a little different than what I did last time. And we'll have a bit of fun. Now I'm going to fill this in with some other smaller blossoms through to kind of round up the composition, to fill it like I want to. And I just may widen and I may shorten this vase just a little bit more, so I have some more space here. Get those ellipses correct. So I have some more space here in the front of that design, so it'll be a little bit shorter. But this vase is just one that I found out on the internet that was free, and of course I purchased this rose and that one, and so you can see, and I put them up so they have the same general light source. So my light source will be hitting right here in the roundest part of the ellipse, which is right about what it should be. Will hit right in there. So that gives me a good idea. Now, the board is based with a light gray that's made from white, black, and a little bit of yellow. It's my favorite. According to the value scale, I try to keep it right up here around a 7, okay? So that's what I usually like a lot of my backgrounds, even though I will apply light to dark and do all kinds of stuff with it, different things with it. I do like to start right around a 7. And I'm going to start some of that light dark right now. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to paint, like I showed you in all the Alla Prima things. We're doing a direct painting, which means we're doing it in one setting. We're going to do it here in under 2 hours. We're going to blow through this lesson. We're going to keep it wet on wet. I do like to paint acrylic in some areas, let it dry. I'll show you when I get going with that. But I'm going to be using long-handled, the Global Art Supplies Fusion brushes. This is a 3/4 inch, well-loved brush. I use that, and then I have the other Fusion flats and stuff that I like. I'll be using some of those to paint. I sometimes use filberts and stuff as well. I'm going to start in just by mixing up some background. I'm going to put in some darker color here for my background. I'm going to put a little extender into this. Instead of the open medium, I'm going to use extender. Maybe even a little of this pink and stuff like that in here too. I generally start out warm Whenever I'm deciding shadows and stuff like that, I start out warm because with a lot of the ways I like to paint, and it is very true. I heard a master once say, it is a lot easier to cool a warm than it is to warm a cool. So it start out, don't get your areas too cool too quickly because it gets very difficult unless you go extremely opaque to warm them up later on. And in a lot of the old masters, whether it be landscape, portraiture, or anything, the shadows were always applied a little thinner. So I tend to start out just slightly warm. I can add a little bit of cool. The cools over here are your red violets, and maybe gray that with just a bit of green. But the green is warm, but the red violet really cools it down. You can see the difference in through here. So it does work. Now my light's going to come up through here. Okay, this will be through cast shadow and also my basically just my compositional shadow and my cast shadow. This will be some of the lowest, darkest areas here of the painting. Now I'm going to put some darks in like this. They're just slightly, it's just slightly cool. Not as cool as it's going to be. But I'm putting this on right now because this dark is going to make everything in my composition, because of the rule simultaneous contrast, okay, it's going to make everything look lighter. So I'm just going to quickly push in some of this. Now this will be, I will have a cast shadow going out this way, but I like to generally just get some of this on. That just helps me, the compositional stuff, helps me see where my light is. Now I will have a little through light right up through there. We'll generally get a little lighter, not quite as dark back up through here. And let's just put in a little center compositional shadow there. And we'll just kind of take this out. Now sometimes I'll do this all with just like light glazes. I'm going to add a little bit of extender now to this and glaze this out. And like I showed you on the rose, if I don't like the brush marks that's on here, I just add a tiny bit of white to it, and it softens and opacifies the color, and you don't get all the brushwork going with it. But I do like some of the brushwork. But all of this, everything that I'm doing right now is going to cover up. Okay, I do this for visuals more than anything else. So I'll see where my darks are going to be. I'm going to leave it a little bit lighter coming up here to the front. That's where my light source is going to be. And once I get this on like this, I can soften this out with a paper towel. Now, like I say in so many things, this is just one of several dozens of ways that I do this, that I put this all on. But that does help you start to see this. And maybe we'll take a bit more burnt sienna, a little green, slightly different tone. I try never to repeat the same tone over and over because then the composition just becomes flat. So look at that rich color in there with that burnt sienna happening in there and a little of that red violet. Let's just deepen down. And you can see now I've got a light coat of that extender on the surface that it just works out really nice here. It just goes over, glazes on really nice. Now lift the pressure on your brush like this, and you'll start to soften, just barely touch the surface, and you'll lightly soften those brush marks. There is a brush that we make that is very specific for doing that kind of stuff. I use it in varnishing and stuff. But this brush, it's a big, wide fusion brush that if you do want to soften that kind of stuff, you can do that. I generally don't do that very often. I do that in Dutch paintings, but I don't do it in a lot of Alla Prima or Premier Coup type paintings because I like the brushwork. And so I generally don't do that. Now, I'm just going to leave a little bit of that around over here. I'm just going to, I'll be covering some of this up again. Look at that. You can kind of see that rich color, the strikes of that burnt sienna, a little bit of that red violet. It's just real pretty in there. Get a little bit of that red violet happening right in here, a few tonal strokes of that. See how pretty that is in there? And see this, by doing this, this gives you your first look, rather than jumping right into your center of interest, this gives you your first look at what you might be doing on your compositions. A lot of times I always say in my classes, I have this list of 19 things that I call it the plan, in formulating your plan for a painting. And in a lot of things, like if I'm painting a commission work and stuff, or consignment piece, you know, that you're doing for someone that's special, I have a very well thought out plan before I start the painting, so the process doesn't have any hiccups along the way. But when I'm doing something like this with you guys, I'm going to show you, I generally have a general plan how I'm going to approach it, but you know, I'll leave myself room to change. And that's how I go about creating new looks. If I make too much of a plan, I hinder my creativity. Does that make sense? So, you know, I like a lot of creativity to come out. So, but I do also believe in using a plan. But you know, creativity is so important. You can put in the idea, and let's just put it in with like a violet here, real quick. The idea of a ground line here. And since the light is upper quadrant, the shadow will be on the wall here. So we'll just push a bit of that, just an idea of that right in there. So we'll have just we can change that. That's easy to change. This needs to go just a touch lower, right in there. And so we can change that. But a little violet, you can kill it. The violet's too bright, kill it with just a touch of green. But that's just kind of really neat right in there. And, you know, you can put in a little bit more of this is the cast shadow side. Underneath here is the contact shadow, so it'll go real thin right in there. You can see that, okay? Sometimes I'll go directly to just put in just a general idea of my light. Now my light, I want this nice, light, warm. I'll take some of this color. We'll be adding many colors to this, but let's just lighten up to like a value 8 or 9 here. So it's just a value or 2 lighter than our background here. Warm, just to get rid of that extra sketching line there. Okay, and let's just set in so we see what the general light, what the value of the light is going to be. So I'm up here right about a 9 here. This is a good light 9. Let's just push some of that in, and I'm just going to walk this across just a bit here in both directions here. I like to use all different kinds of brushwork when I do this, so I get all kinds of calligraphy marks into the ground. So it's going to get the most interest and stuff like that. So now you can see kind of where your ground and all that kind of stuff is going to be here. And I'm going to set that. I'm just going to put a little extender into this brush here and set that off to the side. And I'm going to go put in some color notes as to some of the other colors that I want. Now, one of the colors that I do want to get right away is my center of interest, that rose. So I'm going to warm this up with some of that red. Just use some of the colors of my composition I already have. When I do that, by mixing wet and wet here, and like I say, these are really great acrylics in that they're heavy pigmented, I won't lose the clarity of the color here. Okay, so I'm going to take this general pink here and just come in, and I'm going to leave myself some room to change, but I'll drop down right out to these outside edges, kind of fill in a little bit here of what the general shape is. I like to move my brush many different ways. What the general shape is going to be of this rose here. Not trying to copy it perfectly, just putting it in. And you can soften it with your finger, you can soften it with your brush. Doesn't make too much of a difference. Then I take that color, and this is what's important, is I take that color and I move it. Even though you don't see it in this rose here, I'll move it for harmony through my painting into some other areas around the painting. It's called harmony, adding harmony to your painting. You're taking that common color and you're moving that around, and that causes a tie between the other colors. Now, some of this will paint out and I'll have to add it several times. But you see, and I check to make sure my thought processes here, what I think is going to work, like I'll add some of that color into a vase and stuff, and just make sure that my colors are moving through my composition. This is kind of like a process. It's a trial and error, kind of like, especially if I'm creating something new. It's a trial and error kind of thing right now, just to make sure, I know some of the rules. I've got to move my color. I've got to show my warm and cools. And I've got to move. Big thing is I've got to move that color for harmony. So I'll add it. So whenever I say you express a color, then you accent a color. You accent it down and through in a few areas that, you see that will help carry that color throughout the composition here, okay? Now, let's just add some darks. Let's get in here and we'll key off of our red violet, a little bit of quinacridone violet, a little bit of red violet here. We'll add some of these other greens and stuff like that. What really makes the rose is its center. That casts the gaze of the rose. Let's lighten. See where my hand is on my brush? Way back here. Real light with the pressure just coming up and around. That's setting the inside of that rose. I'm going to add a little bit more quinacridone and some red violet to get back down in here into this deeper color, which is the bowl here. So I'm going to want to see that bowl, some of that color up through here. We'll push a little bit of that color into here. So what this does is basically, and I'll just push it around now. Like I showed you in the other rose, you can brush out to soften the edge. You can take a little extender to soften the edge. You can put in a halftone. My favorite way is painting Premier Coup, which would be more of a halftone. But you can do this as well. Just push that in and soft because it's wet because of the open medium. And just soften that out right now. And you can see just generally where you would put those shadows and stuff into that rose. Now, I'm going to make sure you're always adding that open medium. If it gets too sticky, add a little extender to it here. We're going to paint this one as well. I'm going to push some of that color into this one. Even though it's going to be a white one, I'm going to push that into this rose back here and push those shadows in there. That's going to give me good harmony. So now you can see my colors are translating, through that harmony there. Now, make a nice soft gray. Let's go with the green right into the pinks and the red violets there. Let's lighten it up just a bit. And I'm really going to almost just do the kind of color that's there already. Just a little bit more red here. And just knock in some color here from where that rose is going to be. Right in there. Push that right into the background. Push those colors around there. Okay. You can, since it's a nice white rose, we can warm some areas of it with some yellow, which is pretty, which means we can use that yellow as an accent into this rose as well. So, and then if you do that, then you also start to look, where can you add some of that accent into your vase? Your vase, which is a neutral vase in this painting, it's a big, huge, light-colored object here, is going to carry all your colors of your composition. So we'll be casting, when we put leaves on, we'll cast some of the leaves down into that vase. Especially if it's a ceramic vase that's really shiny, it's going to pick up more, more color, casting color, traveling color. So you'll see quite a bit of it. Let's just gray down some of this violet here, right into here, and let's put that bowl, more of that bowl color and shadow color back here on this side of that rose. And maybe just a little more gray. The thing is, I want a white rose here, but I don't want to paint it like super white because it will take over the pink one really easy, okay? So we'll push that back. Now, some of you are going, wow, this is really different than you've done before. Absolutely. I paint things all different kinds of ways, all different types of techniques, whether Premier Coup, if you're doing Alla Prima, Premier Coup, or pure Alla Prima, any type of direct technique. Sometimes I combine direct and indirect techniques of layering and stuff in it. I paint all different kinds of ways. I'm constantly changing because that's my job. I'm an artist. I'm under constant exploration of different ways to do things. And rather than just always painting one way. and so I do like to do that. So I'm just going to push a little more of that color in. Now, I like to paint, I like to follow John Singer Sargent and paint areas with as large a brush as possible. So normally on a vase like this, which is just a little bit wider as you can see than that one, a little bit shorter. Normally on a vase like this, I would use like a 3/4 or here a 1/2 inch. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch brush here. And I'm gonna start out slightly warm, burnt sienna, some green, put some of these colors in, maybe a bit of the yellow. I'm going to add some medium to it. I'm going to put in a color here and work this color in. I'm going to let some of my initial background, since it's a pretty good color, some of my initial background kind of stay. I'm not going to work harsh edges on this container at all. I'm going to follow really soft Premier Coup, Alla Prima, and blur my edges just a bit. So you'll see me a lot of times as I start to paint something like this, a lot of times I like to use my finger and blur the two together or blur the edges into each other so I lose the edge of something a little bit. Right away, I want to put in my light source so I can start seeing and rounding the vase. So I'm going to go up and warm it with some yellow. I'm going to go up here towards my 9s and stuff, what I have up here, maybe a little bit more. Look right around where you see the shine. That's right around where you're going to start your light. And I like to work it, if it's an up and down vase, I like to work my lights in an oval, in just oval marks like this. I don't always work up and down like this. I work it this way because then the light starts to dissipate out of my brush as I head further down. Here, working like that, and that starts the brush, that starts the roundness to the object. So I touch into here and I work slow oval. Sometimes I do multiple strokes, depends on how much calligraphy is, how much, or the brush marks that you're going to leave into an area. Okay, so sometimes I leave a lot of calligraphy and then I'll just use small, short, choppy motion to it here. So then I have a secondary light right here on the throat there. Okay, so that starts a little bit of the light. Now before I decide whether or not I need to light that up anymore, I start putting on the darks, because color affects color because of simultaneous contrast. Make sure you're always grabbing your paper towel like I showed you before in the paper paint. If you're watching this, let me just say this. If you're watching this video for the first time, you're watching me paint, I have an entire playlist called Alla Prima. This is what we're doing. We're going through a bunch of different ways to paint wet and wet or acrylics like this to get these different looks. There's some easier ones, some more difficult ones, but it's learning Alla Prima, which is what we're doing right now, okay? And one of the things I do is I use this a lot. I pinch, you don't hear me rinsing my brush out because I want to stay everything wet, so I want to stay in the open medium and the extender, and I don't want to use water. If I introduce water into my brush at any time, I've introduced the fast-drying product of acrylics, and I don't want to do that. Okay, so this is very grayed down, very cool in color. And generally when I do something like that, this is where, my blue's been out here all morning. So you can take a mister bottle and mist the top of it, and that would cool it right off. Or reconstitute it right away here. But I'll just push it off to the side. And use any of it, heavy blues, red violets, a little bit of green, just a little bit of burnt sienna here, like this. And these will get you your nice cools, your cool grays here off to this side. And you have to find a gray that you're going to want to work into the composition here. So I'm going to try a couple of them here. I think maybe I'll start it out a little warmer than what I would do heavier because it's a lot easier to cool. So I'm just going to add a little more burnt sienna to it here. And let's take up into here, let's see what this gray, see how nice and dark that gray is there. We'll push just a little bit of that gray. Let's thin that out, add a little bit of our open medium and extender here. Thin that out just a bit here and take a kind of a thin swipe here on this side. So this is basically, because the form shadow, it's right here. This is what's called the form shadow, right in here, and it's really kind of dark right up into these areas. This is a little reflected light right on the edge of the vase there. But the form shadow is going to start from the roundest part of the vase, which is going to be right about in here. So if you're looking at your lights hitting there, but the roundest part of the vase, if this would be right about in here, and that's what you see there, and your form shadow starts there. So what I want to do is take this shadow and this light, maybe a little bit of my pinks here, a little bit of yellows, kind of work them together. This would be considered a half tone. A half tone. So here's my light tone, shadow tone. This is a half tone. And I can push some of that half tone right into this area of the vase here. That will help some of my shadowing. And now, to help that a little bit more, I'll go right over here and create one more half tone between maybe a little bit of green, because I was going just a touch too red there. A little bit of green. And touch that in. One more half tone here. Work that there. And that's how I love to paint with acrylics, is through the tones like this, because, look at it on that camera there. Now, we shoot these, you've seen this, we're shooting this with 3 cameras. We have 3 cameras here in our studio out here, in the gallery out here. And so that one that is there, you're looking at me right now, I have a monitor. You'll see me look at that every once in a while. Since I don't get up and get back from it, I watch my monitor, because I want to see what it's going to look like at about 8 feet. That's what that camera is set at, is 8 feet. So you can see just right about where what it would look like. We can put a little bit of that medium tone right in through here. Look at it pick up some of that pink. That's kind of pretty. We'll try not to you have to be a little careful with the lights. Whenever you add light, you're adding a lot of white. And that white is generally really opaque. So you have to be careful, because you'll take everything out. I'm going to go a little bit more cool to the pinky side right here. Maybe just a bit more of that happening over here towards my reflected light side. Just a general little bit of that. I like to work the tones. Get some different brush calligraphy when I work those tones like that. And very light. This is what the Fusion brush is designed to do. These very light touches. I can tap on a color and then just lightly move it out like that, pressure wise. Now let's go back. Let's go back to our warm. Let's go back to our light here. Okay, slightly different. Let's put just a touch of pink there. Okay, come back into that light there and work that around through this. This gives the beautiful calligraphy I like. Lighten the pressure and just kind of drag it a little bit. Drag that around and through. This building the volume of the vase here. Let's get just a touch more of that yellow happening in there. I like that warmth. Yellow swirling down through there. Like that. See, I like some of those different little tones that happen and stuff there. I don't always watch I don't always watch the vase. I'm not copying the painting of the vase over there. I'm painting kind of my own thing, of what's going to go with my painting here. Push a little bit of that light in there. And that one around there, that looks pretty nice. Okay. And it it's going to need a whole heck of a lot of other tones in it, like some of these nice greens and pinks and greens and stuff into it. I like some of those to come in. We'll push some of that in. I even like on a painting like this, I'll push in some blues and stuff. We'll do that as well. But let's get it up a little bit lighter, closer to a 9, almost a 10. Let's get some of that light out. Now, here's the thing. Acrylics dry a good 10%, which means one value darker. So you think, sometimes you're putting them on and you think, yeah, that's light enough. And then it dries, and an hour later you come back and go, what happened to it? It's darker. Well, acrylics do, because their nature, they do. So I tend to, I'll paint it like this, let this tack up a little bit, and then come back and revisit it with the light and revisit it with the light. And generally, my final lights are a little lighter than what I think I'm going to want onto the vase, so that it will dry down to where I want. Now, this is where I like to just whisper a little bit of this so I get this modeling of light and dark. See this modeling of light and dark, reflecting of this light and dark through there? That's what I like. I build and build and build. I'm using lots of paint now, building this around. Sometimes I'll swirl it around with my finger a bit, so I'll get some swirl marks, which, since these are non-toxic, you don't have to worry about it. We'll go into some of those pinks and greens into the halftone area and just work a bit of those in there. I like some of those colors in there. Sometimes I smooth it way out. Sometimes I leave it a little bit, let's say, underworked, or where it's not smooth at all. And I like that as well. Here we go. Get a bit of that. Let's go a little bit lighter. Work that down the face here of that. That's basically the light for the form of the vase. That's basically where the light is, right down through there like that. And I'm going to set a light shine in there right now, but I'm probably going to redo it, several times. But I do like to see the shine, and there's a little bit of a lower shine there. But I do like to see the shine because that tells me how much light I have, and if I want to center my painting here on the roses, I have to make this one come up lighter than what you see there. So it helps you with your overall, with the look of what you're going to do on your vase. A little bit. Now on this side I can have a little more formal edge to my vase because I'm closer to I'm a little bit more onto the light side there. So I'd have an edge. Over here I like it to blur. Into the shadow side I like it to blur. Now do you want to put that golden band right there or something right here? I do kind of like that. It's a different little color band. So this is some yellow oxide and my nice dirty brush. Just going to drag it right across that like that. Try to do things when you're painting Alla Prima, and we're not painting like a competition piece or anything like this. We're painting Alla Prima. So you try to do things as simplistic as possible. I'm going to take I read a little bit greenish there. So I'll take the yellow oxide, a little bit of my burnt, which I might do first. Just drag just a little bit of that, just to get some highs and lows of temperature. The yellow oxide and burnt sienna. And then I'm going to add a touch of green, maybe a touch of the violet to cool that just a bit. But you do want to read it slightly greenish. And let's just pull in from the edge here and pull in right here from the edge. This is where I really like to kind of turn that big brush right on its side and use part of it. That's just John Singer Sargent always said that. Use as big a brush as possible. That keeps that nice casual nature to your painting, which is so true. Let's put a little more yellow, maybe a touch of light into that here. Maybe even push up my Hansa there. It's got a little skin because it's been out and underneath these warm heaters of the building for 6 hours now. So it's been out a while. But usually I just use a little mister bottle and mist it up, but it is, all you have to do is push it out, but you can just put a little water on it and that will do that as well. Let's put in right in line here just a little mark for where that lighter yellow will be. For right now, that's not done, but that just gives us a look, right? And then sometimes I take this color, which is a great thing to always do, and push that out here. Now what this does is, again, it just helps you carry some of this color, and they pick some of that up into your painting. You're an artist. Take a color, put it on, and move it. Move it through your painting. Here. So let's just push a little bit of that. Since I want the viewer to kind of come in like this and go up, I want a lot of my calligraphy this way, because you're directed by the brush. You direct the viewer through the painting by how you apply that mark. So if I put that mark in at this angle like this, your eye comes in at that angle. If I put that mark in like this, your eye goes horizontal here. So, you want to put that mark in by whatever direction you want that person to come into this painting. So we'll want them to go back and forth there a bit. We'll bring this forward a bit, but I want that kind of feeling there in that side of the painting. And see, a little bit of that dirty, this is why I love to paint on a dirty palette. I really do. It's this dirty palette here. You get some of these other colors that come off. And you can control it to a certain extent, but letting some of that happen is really wonderful. Now, there's a lot of other beautiful artists that clean it off all the time, and I do too. There's times I do that, and they mix up the color and tone and put it on, magnificently and do it that way. But I always find, painting with a dirty palette, you get some of those colors coming off in these different ways, and you can never copy it because you can never get that palette exactly that way again. So it works, but it works pretty nice. Let's put in just a bit more light. Let's walk that down this side here on this vase, and then we'll go up and we'll paint on the rose here a bit and set that into position here. I like that. And so you can see everything here is nice and wet. I can push that color into that one there. And if I really want the stroke to move, add a little more of this. I've noticed, add a little bit more of that open medium, and it just flows that stroke. If your open medium is a little bit too sticky, just add a little bit of the extender to it, and it'll flow really easy for you there. Okay, I'm going to take just a touch of that pink right in there. So I like that into that. Look at that little bit of touch of that pink. It's the kind of, I always, I love color, and I love to push that color in and do some of those different things. So you don't see any of that color in that vase because, the photographer's meant there to take a vase. He's not reflecting all different kinds of colors. He's there to show you a vase, and and that's what he did. It's a nice job, and all I have to do is apply a little bit of color to it, and we can do that. Okay, so that's my 1/2 inch. I'm just going to rinse some of that color out, poke it into a little extender, set that down, go back to my number 8, and let's continue working here just a bit. While I have some of this, we'll try not to go, say, above a value 8 or so, 8 or 9. That'll allow me to paint a nice rose. Let's just start to draw a few of the petals that we see on this rose. So I'll pick that center one that's right there. Now, I'm not going to copy this rose perfectly. I'm just going to pick that center one that's there, push that in, okay? And so what I tend to do is just touch the edge of the brush here into some white. That gives me what I call a drawing edge. So I'll look at the edge of the petal right there, and I'll just kind of draw that edge of that petal in. Then I'll have a blended side, a softer side that I can push into here. And you can just start to construct a rose. Now, in all the videos and stuff that I have with the roses, they're just a set of circles. And you bring these petals, basically these petals just follow up and around and circle up and around here. That's what they do. Now we have a yellow center in that one, which I can put a little bit more yellow in there. But I do want to leave some of that nice red in there as well. So I do like that cooler red in there. So, but I'll just lightly push it up and around. Keep that circular motion there. Keep that up and around. Push that around. Okay. Let's get a little bit more of that light right out here. And draw that petal. We'll draw this one in. I'm going to change some of this rose I don't like. So I'll change a bit of it here. And like I say, it's just an idea of it. This one has a folded up petal, and I'm not sure I want to leave it folded up, or for composition wise, do I want to push this white one over the edge of that pink one there? And I might want to do that. Now, I have that. You see me doing some strokes pulling in. I'm going to put a half-tone stroke. I'm going to loosen this up, a little extender, of some of this gray, pinky gray, right in there to soften that down. See how that instantly softens that down? I'm a tone painter. I like painting tones, and so I can draw with a light tone and soften with a half tone, push a little half tone and just soften and shadow there. That's how I really truly like to paint, but I paint all different kinds of ways. Let's put a little more light. Let's draw this light edge here. Boom, out and around. A little bit more light of an edge. Let's get a bit of that yellow. I read a little bit of the yellow and stuff down in here to the, makes the bottom of the bowl. See the bottom of the bowl there of the rose? So that's the bottom of the bowl. I could have a touch more light down the front here. Pull that down like that. That works pretty well. I can also use that petal edging technique here just to start adding, even before I finish the rose, start adding a little more interest to some of the petals that I've already drawn there. And again, taking inspiration from this rose, but not copying it. I just want to take some inspiration from it. I don't want to copy this rose. I feel my roses become too stiff if I try to copy too much. I'll put another back petal right here. I'll take a half tone in there and just shove that back into position there with that little half tone. And I can bring the bowl on that one doesn't show up quite as much, but I can make this more of a bowl just by pulling down there like that. And I'm going to reset that front kind of curvature petal here, right up to the front here, a little bit more. But see, I kind of look over and I get an idea, but I don't copy. I don't like myself to get into a copy mode. So when you're watching this, you know, you can read off of that rose right there. You can read off of mine, but change it a little bit. I mean, go ahead and let it change. If you try to copy, you're just going to get frustrated. It just gets into a frustration. Okay? We're artists. We create. Yours can be different than mine. It's okay. As a matter of fact, that's great. Let that happen. You know, it's like I said in the other rose video, though, just don't paint it better than me, because I'm very sensitive about it. Okay, I'm kidding. No, don't. You can paint it any way you want. Just have some fun with it. And I really would love it if you paint it better than me. That means I'm a good teacher. That's what I like to do. So I draw it around. I'll pull out like this. What is that giving that? Movement. That gives that petal movement that we've talked about in all, remember all of the 30-day roses. I talked so much about the movement of the petals in a rose. We can put a little bloop of a petal out there like that if we want. Kind of draw it, kind of push that around a bit there. Let's get that lighter little edge here. You can, you know, just use your brush. You can go to a smaller brush too. I like to follow, like I say, Sargent, and use as large a brush as possible when I'm doing this kind of stuff. Do I want, here I'll get down to a little darker. We'll just push some of this out here, down. This is the lower part of the rose there. Now, you know, how much of that rose are you going to leave like that? Now, this is where I like to come in and let's just come over here with some yellow. And let's just push in some yellow. Push that right in. Just pull that right in through there. Push that right in. So it gives a little more of a yellow cast to that. And then I can come in. We can add a little more light right in there. Slightly different tone. A little different movement there. We can go just a bit lighter here. Let's put that light edge. Since my light is up here at the top, let's put a little bit more light. We want to read the light coming up through. Okay, so let's read this just a bit lighter here. Push that in. Read a bit more light here. Different than what that photo is now. But I'm applying my light source to it that I want to see that's going to be consistent with that, the vase and stuff that I'm painting here. So I'm painting for consistency here. Pushing just a bit more light. Now that's getting really close to too much, but here. But I want to see that light. I'm watching that light traveling down through here. Of course, the lighter you make it, the more you go forward. And if this starts to, compete too much with that, the pink one that I'm going to paint here, which I'm going to lighten up the pink one quite a bit more than we did in the last time. If it starts to do too much, then I've got to back it back down. Let's put a little cooler red violet quinacridone in this gray. Let's put a little more cool right down in there. And we'll kind of keep that. Let's put a bit of that red in there as well. You see a bit of that. I like this kind of calligraphy, the little marks. I like to leave those kinds of marks in there. Let's, there's this petal here and this rose cuts across the front of it. And I do kind of like that, cutting across the front of that there. That's a little stiff, so I'll back up some of my halftone right into it and take some of it and soften it out there just a bit. And let's put just a bit of that light mark right out here on the edge of that one. And I think I'll leave that one. It's not done, but I'll leave it. You don't want to. Here's a good caution for you. Have you ever been so frustrated at something and painted? Me many times. Been painting on it, and it just doesn't look right. You keep painting on it. And what I always tell my students is, what you've done is you've painted it out of perspective. If you paint something too much before you add some of the other stuff, it's out of perspective, and it could be right, but you don't know because you have nothing else that's at that same level of completion to compare it to. So don't go in there and paint a finished rose in there right now, because it will start to look wrong because we have nothing else to compare it to into our painting here, okay? So let's go in and let's make some nice light, warm pinks. That's going to come from our naphthol red light and our white, maybe some yellows. Put in some of our nice medium here. It's going to be a little bit warmer than or a little bit more orangier kind of stuff and pinker than what we see in our painting or our rose that we have here. Let's apply the light. We're going to bring out the front of it, which means we're going to bring out a little bit more than what you see in that rose here. Now, that could be just a touch too light to start with here, Dave. So let's drop it down, get back down towards our 7s here. That's better. It's a better color. Let's drop in some 7 to the front of the bowl, right there in the light. We also want to read this part of it more towards the light now too, because the light is upper this side. So this might be the grayer side here this time. Remember on the other rose we painted the gray on the other side, on this side. This time we're going to paint it down over here, because our light is upper, because it's hitting here, so our light's going to be here, so our gray would actually be a little further down. Let's just kind of swirl this around a bit in there. Before we do that, center one, we're just kind of sketching on the light of the petals, where they are there. This big. Now remember on the last one, I ended up dividing this one up into a couple of petals. So I'll start with the bigger one here, but I bet you I end up doing it the same. A lot of times I feel that, you paint these big whippy petals on the roses. They look great in photos, but for a painting, they don't have as much interest as they could. Let's put it that way, as they could. Let's put a little brighter red and quinacridone. Let's come over here for a second. Finding a semi-clean spot on my palette here. And let's push that. Oh, that's a pretty color. Let's push that right into that right down into here, right in at the bottom and base of my bowl here. Let's just push some of that. Now it's a bit heavy over there, but I think I might just like that. Let's go over here towards our grays, push some of the grays in there, and just work that color in. That's how I love to paint the vase. As I work some of the rose colors, I'll just add it right there into the vase. And because the vase carries everything in your composition, and I like that. We can even use that as almost the reflected light here down that side. There. Blur that out a bit. We'll do that. Let's get some of that light here. And swirl some of that around. Like I said before on the other rose, when the painting of it, I put on too much light and then I paint it into position with my dark. That's how I like to paint them. I swirl the light and the dark. Let's put that little center light on here so you can keep a little bit oriented to that rose. There. Okay. But again, I'm not going to copy everything on it. We're going to change quite a bit here. Put in some nice light movement there. That's kind of pretty. Let's get a little bit more of our light. Slightly cooler. I'm away from that light warm side, so a little bit of quinacridone into this. Let's get that over here, slightly lighter and cooler towards this white one. And pull that down. Now, you can soften like I showed you before with a half tone. A half tone is just a little bit darker, maybe even a little grayer here. And push that in and start to soften that out until you get to that real dark. Just slowly take a stroke or two darker. That's how I really like to paint, especially portraits and stuff. I like to do that rather than doing too much pushing with my finger or too much softening with the brush. I like to paint that way because it keeps that calligraphy, really nice calligraphy going in your painting. We'll push that in. Beautiful color. Nice little half-tone color to see in there. There. And yeah, now let's get a bit more light. We'll draw hitting a little bit more of the light edge. We're going to watch this up against our other rose there to make sure that we're starting to get this light where we need. Now the light has got to come up a little bit more on this side, a little grayer on the bottom side, but a little bit more up on this side towards the white on this rose. So we're going to bring these petals out here, actually lighter than what you see on the rose, because our light source is there this time. So a lot of times I use these photos. Like I said, I bought this one off of Adobe Stock Photos. I use the photos and then I use them for shape, petal shape, and ideas. I don't copy them, but I use them for ideas. But I change the light. I've spent so many years studying color theory, I can see it in my mind where the light should be and how the light should be. If you can't, then you're finding reference photos. Find something that is what you want to paint. And, the big thing is start to learn how to control the tones of your painting. That's the big thing. And then the more and more practice you get, the less and less that you need to, study that. I spent my whole life painting in the decorative painting, and we create from nothing, from imagination all the time. So creating from imagination is not new to me. But I do like to have a reference to study a little bit of nature or give myself some ideas here. Let's now, so to gray it, like I did with the last one, I put just a tiny bit of the green in, and look what happens to that color. It grays, see? It grays down. And this is the lighter kind of gray color. If we're going to put a kind of a swooping petal here, the lighter kind of gray color that'll come on this side of the rose. So we can even put that gray in more as a halftone here into here See, it's a grayer pink. It's a pretty tone, see? But it's grayer. It's a little bit grayer. Really kind of close to what's going on in there. And we'll darken it down, gray it down just a bit. Let's come away from the light down here to this area. Push that in. Okay. Maybe push just a bit lighter here. Put it on the edge of the petal, or the edge of your brush here. And just kind of draw around. You can push that edge of the petal in there. Like that. So it comes up in front of that vase a bit. Okay. How much you do? Well, that's all up to you and your technique. Or what you want to do with your rose here. I'm going to go back to my darks for a second. And push a little bit of gray into that. I'm going to need to get out some more quinacridone. Almost gone. In fact, I put that out here. So we'll just squirt out a little bit more of my quinacridone there. And we'll push that in. Some pretty colors. Push that darker, more contrast color right in there. Get into a little more quinacridone, a little bit of red, and some lighter pink. Get that in as that half tone right out here. And then a little bit lighter yet. Feed a little medium to it. A little bit lighter yet. I like to model all of this together in my brush. Gives me just beautiful tones, see? Just touch it through a little bit, and you get that undulation of those tones. It's, one reason why you use a nice high quality acrylic that doesn't muddy. Can you do that? I get a lot of you that come in and say, well, I can't do that with I keep getting mud. Maybe it's your acrylics. There's some acrylics that are made to be painted opaque, and so they put opacifiers in it. We used to use a chemical called Destrin. It was an opacifier, and you put that into the paint to make it opaque. But it also destroys its ability to mix. So it could be your acrylics. Try different. So let's just push that in. That's just kind of a real pretty thing there, but it can have that other petal in there. So let's go a little bit lighter, just a little lighter, some of that cool, but a little bit lighter. And just like I say, see, I put it on that edge, the receding edge here, and I'll just draw that other petal right in there that you want to see in there, see? And then I'll go back to my nice soft little halftone, and I can lift out, wipe my brush, lift out until I get just the edge of that petal that I want to see in there. Like that, and leave that petal like that. But that's a good drawing color there. We could draw a little bit into this one here. Leave that a little bit. I like sometimes just to leave them a little mottled and stuff there as well. Beautiful little cool tone there. Put that into that rose there. That's kind of pretty. But I do like to, have those sparks of light, warm colors. Let's put a spark of a nice light, warm color right in there as well to play against that cool. There, that's kind of pretty there. Yeah, maybe just a touch of that warmth right up here. Let that change. Here, on this other rose, that other petal leans out. Remember on the other one, I took it a little bit longer and pulled down, and I liked that better. Just destroy that edge just a bit. Let's fold this over just a touch. So the angle of your brush shapes the petal, see? So I'll pull it down like that. It makes it look like it's rolled over just a bit here. And that helps so much there. And I just used my finger and took it out by mistake. But I wanted to show you that there. There's a lot of times, I make all the mistakes and everything, and we all make them, and you just go back and fix it. It's just paint. Just go back and put some more in there. There we go. And we'll push that edge back in there. There, like that. Let's get some of that reds and red violets and stuff and push in that. That's a little bit too cool. Push in that deeper shadow right back over here on this side. Sometimes I'll leave it really harsh like that. Sometimes I'll push it or smooth it out a bit. A lot of times though, I like that movement. I like the movement into the rose. But I'm going to smooth that out just a bit. So we'll come in with a halftone. A little bit lighter, right between my light and my dark. This little halftone. Just drop that right in there. Push just a bit. There. And you can always, and this is what I do. If I disrupt that front edge, which I just did, which is not a problem, I just come back and touch it again. And push that in how I want to see it. And sometimes I'll look at that and go, wow, that's actually a better direction for that petal to pull in like that. And what my first thought was. Let's pull that down. There, like that. So that's going pretty well. I could have some lighter. Now I start to look for how light then am I going to want to have that rose. So that's pretty good. That's a pretty good strike there. And sometimes I'll do this, guys, which is really a lot of fun, is I start using my halftones more as strikes. And you'll see a lot of artists do this. Strikes. And so now that's cutting right across there. So I'll soften that. Do I soften it? I'll soften it maybe a little bit of both of those, making a halftone right between there and pulling at a slightly different angle. And so that gives you all different kinds of looks to your strikes, to what you're doing here for your petals. And, I may want to have one more petal coming across like that here. I like that into the rose. And I got to paint a little bit of my roses into this. Soften that shadow. Pull that up there just a bit. So you can see the construction of it here. Now, we have this larger, I have this larger petal here, this whippy one that's like that. And it's a big one. It's actually out a little further here. But, when I paint the flowers and I paint it like this, and you're getting that rose, you're getting that idea of the rose. But I feel like, especially from the Dutch philosophy, from the Dutch philosophy, which I follow a lot, the queen rose, which they called the queen, she had the most petals, the most interest, the most going on. So, you buy a photo of a rose, well, when you put that into a composition, you may have to add something more. Let me show you. By adding another petal right across here like this, layering that just a little bit more, I add just a touch more to her look here. I'm going to put on this petal and a little bit too much white, pull that across, and then I'll go back to my halftone dark and just kind of pull that mark right across there. And so the thing is, that petal, do I want to... And I may work this front petal like this 3-4 times to get it to the shape that I want here and the lightness that I want. Let's go back halftone darker and push that. Sometimes I'll just pull out just a bit, leaving that shadow. But you see that little petal edge. Sometimes I'll leave that little petal edge. It starts to get that light little edge. Sometimes I'll widen it out. I paint differently all the time. Let's just put a little petal edge right out here and just leave that little petal edge there. See, just boom, just leaves that. And so you do that like this. See, you pick up just a tiny little bit of it onto your modeled brush, just a tiny little bit of the edge, and you can use that to help draw little edges like that, little sparks of interest onto your rose, to give it a little bit more pizzazz if you want. Here. Let's do that one more time there. So there's that other video, like I said, I uploaded it a few days ago on the petal edging technique, and I show an entire little composition of roses with the petal edging technique. I'm going to round this bowl just a bit more. Because again, now I'm a little bit away from my sample there, and I'm kind of painting my rose now. In a way in which I like to paint the rose. Let's turn this edge just a bit. Here. That's kind of pretty. A little different. Here, let's just drop that one in again. And a bit more of that shadow following the bowl. And leave some of that front. I like that. Maybe a bit light, cool. Right up here. Pull that down so you get a better feel of the shape of that. We'll round this petal, or put this edge onto this petal here. And again, you could use a smaller brush, but I do always lean into Sargent and his, paint with as light a big brush as possible. Okay, let's add some big highlights now. And you can warm this slightly with a little yellow here. Big pink 9s here. Yeah, right in what I did there before. So just touching in and looking at the light. I want to always see the light. Like here on this side, you see the light here. So I want to expand out some of the light here on this side of my rose, so you start to see just a bit more light through that. The viewer should always have a real good, clear indication of where the light is in your painting. You're an artist. You're supposed to be, painting the light. That's what we do, right? And so we do want to make sure we show it into the painting of this rose here. Our light and our shadow here. Get a bit more of that right in there. So see, there's many times that I'll paint something, and then as I adjust it, it really changes as I start to look and add the light, and I always let myself do that, and to change. I always let myself do that. And I like that because it keeps your flower, if you're constantly changing it just a little bit, working it, the light, working it, the values and stuff into that, it is not going to be a stiff flower when it's all done. Okay, let's put some final nice light little hits right up there. Nice light pinks, nice light warm pinks to the sides. Bit of my shadow. I like all of that movement. See all that movement, the building and the movement that it gets to that rose. It could have just a touch of that light walked down here. And to really, give it, let's put a little burnt sienna in this too, and a little green to gray it. I'm going to go down to the bottom to my cools. So to really get that nice light, you really got to kind of walk through all your petals. So I'll increase some of the shadow on this side of the rose. See? I'll increase some of the shadow. And you might end up taking off just a few of those edges there. But I increase the light, increase the shadow. That makes the light come in here and then down. And that gives you a pretty good indication there of that. So let's take some of this pink. We'll put a little bit of the green in here. We'll lighten this up. This is all pretty color. Nice pretty grays here. That can go into this vase here. Boom. Right into this vase. This light. here. Push that around. There. Work that, let's go over here. A little bit cleaner, a little bit more yellow. A little bit clean area here. And work this again. Get that nice value 10 white right up there. Right full-blown white right up there in that shine. Here we go. So you get some of those nice colors and stuff going through there, you know. Now, I'm going to rinse this because I got thick color there in my brush. When you do that, stick it back in the extender so you can get rid of some of that water out of your brush there, okay? I'm going to rinse out my 3/4, do the same, because I'm going to work some of my greens and my violets, burnt siennas again. Get those greens in there like that. Let's work that nice deeper, a little bit deeper, darker color here. Work that. See how it just pops up that vase. Boom. Now what I want to do, I'm going to take some of my mediums here. I'm going to thin this out. A little extender, a little open medium here. And I'm just going to lightly blur that edge. This is one of the things, and I'm going to use this also right down in here in this cast shadow. Get some of those colors in there. Right in there like that. But, and then what we'll do is we'll take some of our original pinks and greens, a little bit of that grays, touch of that blue and stuff that we had in there, and drag that down that side of the vase. You want this edge of the vase here to really become lost, so I want to blur the edge just a little bit of that edge going out into that background there. See? And I'm going to take get myself a clean paper towel here, just some extender and stuff in my real dirty brush here, and just work through this vase like this, looking at the movement, and that softens the movement. Now you don't want to do so much that you blend out all of your brush work and stuff, but see how you can soften that movement. And I want to soften this right into that background shadow that's right there, so that that vase just kind of loses some of its edge. And that's what makes it, I like that in a lot of the Alla Prima vases and stuff you paint. Lose that edge, lose that vase right into that edge there. Like that, pulling that in. So you get that real lost edge. And I like that into the painting. We'll grab some of these lighter pinks, some of these grays here, mid-tones. Work that through here like that, so you get some of those beautiful colors in there. Now, see all the colors working in there. Let's get some of that light, a little yellow, sometimes maybe even just a little bit of the green and these pinks here. Let's work that through. This is more of a half tone, mid-tone to there. Just work that through here. And that's kind of pretty in there. Works kind of nice. And see, I love painting with a real big brush because I can put down some powerful brush marks. And all of this that you do, you know, I had some students that were saying, well, you're just covering up what you already did. Yes, you are. What you already did was your idea. Now you're refining it a little bit more. I never look at something like, ooh, I got to avoid that because I already did it, unless I really, truly love it. But I always know that, you know, there's more building that can always be done in a painting, on a vase. There's always more that can be done, and to make it more beautiful. And you can see here, as I'm building this, there's just a little bit more. Even though I take out some of that light that's there, and I can come back with this light little pink here. This will be pretty right down that edge right there, see? Boom. Isn't that kind of pretty? Just hitting that edge there, just with that light little pink here. You know, maybe that hits right here, especially going to hit right up here because of that rose. If you're painting more of a ceramic shiny surface vase, it's going to reflect that right in there. You know, that's kind of nice right in there. And then let's go, I'm going to go to my 1/2 inch here, a little smaller, and define that light yet again. And I'm not afraid to do it several times. This is, to me, is what makes a beautiful vase. Here is working those colors that several times. I'm going to leave the throat of the vase there a little bit darker. I'm going to do just a bit of this angle to help suggest that nice edge of the vase, that angle there. And let's get our light. Let's get some tin. Get a little bit lighter texture, thick textured paint here. Boom, push that in. Boy, this is just really thick paint now. Pushing a bit of that light right in there. That light, that secondary light doesn't belong there. There we go. And, you know, then I'll go look to see, is there any kind of accent, you know, swirl kind of things, real light pressure. Do I want to just accent a little pink right along the bottom of that vase like that? See, isn't that kind of pretty? Get those tones in there. You know, I'm going to add some green leaves and stuff, so accenting that just a little bit of grayed green would be pretty in there as well. Picking up just a bit of that, the pink and green, you know, very popular. You know, pick up some of that. Boy, I had one student, and she would always do everything pink and green. She passed away now, but whenever I put pink and green on, I always think of her, because everything was like her whole world revolved around pink and green. Yeah. We'll put on just a bit of that light. Get the feeling of that direction there. And that's kind of so that vase just kind of carries a lot of different stuff there. And that's kind of neat. Let's go down to our little bit smaller brush here and use our yellow oxide and white, maybe a bit of our Hansa. We'll squirt that out, and a bit of our Hansa here. And we'll put on some nice little light hits right up here into this part of the vase there. And I'm just going to keep them really, really quite casual. We'll put a little hit of it right up here, even though it's not on that one. Here, maybe even a lighter hit shine, a little more white. You can really see it on the foot of that one in there. Maybe drag that around a bit. But like I say, you know, just like everything, if I put on too much, then I'll just take a little yellow, maybe a little burnt sienna into that, and just kind of drag through it a bit, take it down, and that always works really nice. Here. The majority of that foot will be painted with the cast shadow here, or the contact shadow of this. Let's put that in. Red. The contact shadow is one of your darkest shadows in your composition. So we'll take some red, violet, and pine green, and we'll drop in the contact shadow real thin, and then it gets a little bit thicker as it goes over towards the cast shadow here. And I'm just going to blur that edge just ever so, just a little bit there. And take a little burnt sienna. And so I just lightly like drag the edge, and see, it makes a pretty little, just lightly. So I push and lift, and then just a little bit of a push there at all. And that puts that nice gray. And of course it is a little bit more greenish in the photo, and you can do that, but I think mine is okay. So I'm just going to leave it just a little bit of green in there. And that's enough. That just gives it a pretty little foot. there. And we'll rinse that color out. So we won't use that brush again here for a little bit. And I'm going to go back to like my number 8 or a 10, or even this 1/2 inch is a real nice painting brush for this size here. So I may want to do some more little touches, you know, of shadows and stuff here, you know, onto the rose, and you know, that's your call, you know, how much you want to shape and shadow and all that stuff here. But I do like to keep some of those shadows pretty dark down in there. You know, I'm constantly, that's what I always do, I constantly revisit my roses and stuff. And I don't like that these come together, and you know, sometimes you don't see it. Now, some of you may have already seen it, and but I don't like how they come down to a V right there. So I'm going to change that just a bit. And I can do that. I know how to do that. Change it. You use paint. You know, use some paint, change it here. We'll just put a little bit more. And sometimes, you know, when you're changing, like what I'm doing here, use this larger brush. Don't go back to the other one. You'll paint it all the same. So a larger brush will give it a different, totally different look, you know. And it's not a bad thing. Let's just draw that around a bit. There we go. Now it doesn't quite go to a V. Still has a bit of a line, which I'll take out here with a slightly lighter petal, maybe pulling out. So we'll just slightly put a petal out this way. Now it's way different than the sample, but that's kind of nice there. Breaks that little V shape there of that one. There. There we go. That's kind of pretty. Puts that out a bit more, maybe a touch of that light right over here. So don't forget, you can pull out, you can pull in. Remember, you set the brush down like I showed you on the peonies, like we did in the last rose. You can set it down and go in and out to push-pull. That technique, that is such a lovely working technique into the roses. You can do that as well. You know, there's just a lot of different ways. Let's go to our classic warmer green first, and then we'll cool it. Pine green, burnt sienna, one of my favorites. We'll do a little negative painting up in here. We'll blur that edge just a bit. This will add a bit more interest. Let's push this down here, and see, you can change the outer shape of your roses here. We'll push a bit more of a, we'll go casual greenery. How's that? Casual greenery here. Push that, drop some of that over the edge of your rose. I'm going to push something in here. Here, like that. Here. We'll go, we can do pink and white little blossoms in there, or little buds or something here. Little flowers here would be pretty. Pink and white and some colors in there. This is where I really like to go. I'd like to go faster. I'll take some of these greens and we'll make some nice grays here. And just start shaping, flipping back and forth between the pinks and the greens here. There, like that. Just to put on some little flowers there. Let's go just a heavy little bit there. Back up over there. It just kind of round up the composition a little bit. We always think about the express light, maybe a bit more white, maybe a bit of the yellow into that here. And my paint's really thick, so I have to use a light pressure to get it to stick. And or if you're painting acrylics, just let it tack up for a second, and then you'll get it Here we go. Just little bits there. Little things, quick little color movements. Let's just put a few of those out here. Little edges of them. That's kind of neat. A little bit light, but we'll just blur it off a bit. That'll make it look like we know what we're doing. And let's get some more green into this. So we'll change that color up a bit. And usually what I do is it's like whenever I paint something like this real casual, and I like using like a Premier Coup where I slowly like walk up the scale. So I started dark, and now and I'll put on some of these other greens here. But I started dark, and then I start walking up the scale to lighter color. So I put the dark on wherever I see that I really need dark. Here, start with that, and then I start walking up the scale here to my lights. So, and I start to add yellow in here and whites to get lighter greens, and I can make some lighter green marks here. You can add a little Hansa to get a brighter green, a little bit of white here. Make some different colored leaves. Follow your light source. Don't just splash it around everywhere. Get it lighter. Think about getting lighter. Where's your light? It's up here. So these start to get a little bit lighter. Does that make sense? These will stay down, get dark, maybe even blur their edges a little bit right in there. Okay, so keep that going. Now, some of these greens, like I have here, these pinks and these greens and all this dirty stuff, looks wonderful up here. Right up into the front of your painting. Look at that little bit of green. Isn't that pretty? Because it's traveling it down, see? You're traveling light. That's your job. You're the artist. You got to travel this color. Color's your thing. So you got to travel it and move it. And, I like to work, a lot of the colors and making sure they're moving around. Here. Look at that little bit of yellow into that yellow-green there. That looks kind of wonderful. Nice little warm right in there. Pull some of that out. That's kind of pretty, Where else would you put that? The vase. How about the vase? Boom. Thank goodness that worked. No. You do a lot of stuff that doesn't work. You just take it off. But yeah, that kind of worked right in there. Boy, right in that mid-tone. That looks kind of nice right there. It also kind of picks up the reflection of that table right in there, doesn't it? See, and that's one thing that if you have a curvature of the vase, you would pick up a little bit of that, color from the table right in there. And that I like a little bit of that calligraphy in there as well. That looks a little nice. Let's lighten that up just a touch more. Yep. And let's just pull down just a bit right in here. There we go. That's kind of pretty. Right in there. Yeah, that works quite nice. I think I'm going to put out just a little bit more white here. Put out just a bit more. Travel that down. There we go. We got that nice light hit. Let's take some of that nice light warm right out here, right across our painting there. Now, sometimes, if you follow it, like those of you that have, painted with me for quite a long time, I love Couchoir and Eugene Henri Couchoir, and the French Impressionists of the 19th and 20th century started putting a lot of little blossoms and stuff down on the table, little petals and stuff, or another flower or so down onto the table, which I kind of like sometimes. So I might put a few of those on there just to do that. I'm going to work this light right up against the edge of the vase there. Blur those. Now, something like the Franz, he would blur those in together, and so it's kind of neat. Just leave your, calligraphy. This is really what becomes your part of the painting here is these kinds of marks and the brushwork and the calligraphy. You can always tell somebody, by how they're painting now, their calligraphy now. Let's just pull that down. That's works really well, I think. Pink those could go a little bit lighter. The light blossoms could use some of that color here. I like to do just little color hits of those, and so that works really well. Do you want to soften off your background? Now you can leave it, just like that, and or you can push a little color into that to soften some of that out here. Just a light little gray color, and yeah, put it on now. And just go right up to the edge of your flowers and stuff like that. It just puts on a little more color. It'll cover up some of your brush work and stuff. You add those whites, remember it opaques, right? Add just a touch of those whites and stuff, and it opaques. And it will take out some of that brush movement that you had there. You don't want to take it all out, but see, it softens your entire effect and keeps your eye back up onto your flowers here. So you can do a more formalized, all painting light and dark, or sometimes I like this. I just lightly push back the shadowing of it there. And I can turn around and add a little bit more. Let's get our greens and our violets out here. A little bit of the burnt sienna. I like to get real dirty here. Let's get that burnt sienna in here. And work some of those cast shadows and stuff back out just a bit more. Put a little extender in here to thin it and thin out your color, so you're putting it on more as a wash. So thin it out into your brush with some extender here. You put it on more as a wash, and you can use your paper towel to pull through, add a little extra interest. I like interest. I like this kind of stuff that the paper towel does add. So I can add a little bit of that and then take just a light pressure of my brush like this and start to soften it out a bit, see, until I think I take it right down into position. So I like that paper towel to kind of blow through all the colors, take them out a little bit, and then I can soften through, and it almost puts like more interest back in there. You see that? And yeah, I do like that. Let's push in a little more dark compositional shadow here down this side. There. See, take out a little bit with the paper towel, and then just lightly soften back through that again. I do like that. Some of that compositional shadows and works here. And little touches. This is where I do that little brush dance through there. And yeah, now you can, here we'll take a cooler color, do a little bit of red, violet, and burnt sienna. Some of this green and stuff here too. Let's put in a contrasting color in here into around the centers of these blossoms. Just tacked up just a little bit here around the centers of those blossoms there. And then we'll tap into a little yellow oxide here. Nice thick yellow oxide there. You know, that's one of the things. Is like, I love the paint, you know, when I'm doing especially something like this, and I want a little bit more texture, a little bit more stuff going on. I love the paints when they get a little sticky and they're heavy and stuff, and that's why I haven't missed it at all. It's been out here all day and stuff, so now it's 5:45 Friday afternoon, And so I put these out at 9 o'clock this morning, so you can see they're starting to get a skin, and I didn't mist them or do anything to them here. And just let them sit out all day. I like that, where they get sticky and old, and it really allows me to do textures and stuff like that. I can loosen it up. You can take any of these colors like this and add a little extender and start to loosen them all back up again so that they paint. But then they don't, then it just slips and slides around. I like it to be a little bit sticky, you know, to what I had here. So I'm going to pick up some of this nice thick Hansa. Just tap a little bit of that here and there. Just a little difference on that. That's kind of pretty. That one up there is a little bit heavy. I do like it, but it's a little heavy. So I'll just take some of my dirty color here and push into it, lift some of it off, push around, just reduce it a bit there. So until I kind of like it there. Now the question is, you know, do I want to do any more on the white rose or anything like that? Do you want to, you know, now start balancing your painting? Do you want to see more lights into your pinks? You know, into the photo, we're lighter than what we are into the photo here. But do you want to see any more? You know, this is up to you. This is your painting now. Now you start to adjust it to what you like, what you want here. You know, we're away from our rose. Now we added this other little petal. I'll maybe push in a bit more light right into that. Do you want to see more of that bull shadow going all the way through? You know, that's all little things that you can control now and do. Here, we'll push just a little bit of that through. Do you want to see any more? Take a real thin greenish, kind of greenish grayish, pinky colors here. Push that in. Look at that much shadow. What that does for the contrast there of that white rose. You know, do you want to see any more of that? Or do you want to leave them like that? Do you want to push back some more form shadows, some pinks? Just do some quick little brush work out through here. Let that fall away. See? Let's put a little bit of that dirty pinky green. This is a beautiful thing about painting dirty palette, which is what I like. And see, you can make like little back flowers, little things there going on. That worked out pretty well on that. So, you know, and you can, like I say, if you want to reshape the rose, if there's something you want to reshape the rose, and this big forward one here, it's kind of like, is that a little bit too big? Or do I want to compress the bowl down just a bit? You do that with your darks. That's the easiest thing. Do it with your darks. So let's look at shortening this down just a bit more and see if I like that a bit more here. Putting in that nice, deep, rich shadow right in there like that, which shortens down that rose. It's going to put in more contrast, which is a good thing. Okay, maybe we'll take just a bit of that. And this is what I always generally do, is I revisit my center of interest, the queen, what I want to see. Especially towards the end of the painting, I revisit her again and just make sure everything is correct on that. So let's round this bowl just a bit here. Just a bit of that coolness and roundness there. And see, it shortens her up a bit. You can put in another petal in there if you want. Just get some of that color in there. And pull the edge of that petal around. Draw the edge of one right in there like that. Pull this other one down here to meet that just a bit. Don't lose that shadow. There. That's kind of pretty. There, that's kind of pretty. Works, I think, though. See, And this is where I'm going to start stepping a little bit further away, and then I'm going to call this from the original. But I think maybe if I carry this one down here, turn this into two, it kind of looks like it's making two petals there, or one petal, so I'll make it into two here, definitely, on this rose. So a little bit more light. Curve this just a bit more, so I get definitely two petals coming off there, and that's a little bit prettier. That's the way it is in the original. It's just slightly shaped just a little bit different, but put in a little warmer color, and we'll get a little more light into it. There, like that. Draw some of those petals around. And keep that cool back here. A little more red, red-violet, right back here. And then Dave quit playing with it, because you could play with this all day. Maybe one more little petal. This is the part of the rose that I really like. It starts to really, you can really control the shape of it and stuff, and this is the part I really like. But I think that's kind of fine. You can put more of the wavy petals in and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to do that. I think that's a nice painting for what it is. It's a nice painting for a couple hours here. 1 hour, 46 minutes, 32 seconds, looking at my shot clock there. So have that. But it's kind of pretty. And you put a bit of those pinks into the, travel your colors. Make sure you see some of that pink. If you haven't painted it out, see a bit of that over here on that side. And then we'll call it, okay? We'll call it. And next we're going to, I promised some that I'd show another beginning style rose. I put one up, and more of a beginning style rose again. We're going to show that again, a different way. Simpler, quicker beginning style rose. Run it through the Alla Prima type of things. And then we're going to do some landscapes. A few landscapes too. We'll always do flowers. I'm going to try to add at least one flower a week and start doing some landscapes, altering back and forth. So my landscape painters can do some of their landscapes, and my flower painters can do some of your flowers, okay? And let me know what some of the stuff you want to see. I have a request for hydrangeas and a few other birds and stuff, and we got to do those too. We got a lot of paint. We got all year. We're going to do this all year. It's going to be a lot of fun. Alrighty? Okay. And don't forget to get over to, look for the links for, you can go over to Jansen Art Studio, hit the contact page. There at the bottom is all our social media, but we have a group over on MeWe.com that is all of our heritage artists. It's called the Heritage Acrylic Artists, and I think we're a little over 300 of us over there right now. And there's teachers on there and students and painting and talking and showing your work. And if you have trouble, just go post your photo over there, what you're having trouble with, and we'll help you with everything. And I go on there at least once a day and so and post lessons. I posted some on shadows and some different things, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And so go over there and make sure you do that, okay? Alrighty. I'll see you guys on the next one. And we'll do some landscapes and stuff. Okay. See you later.